I still remember that heart-stopping moment as if it were etched in neon on my soul. 100 words of raw, searing betrayal that shattered my innocence and ignited a lifelong quest for dignity. In the quiet of my small apartment, amidst faded family photos and bills piled high, I learned the crushing truth. Every dollar I earned, every ounce of hard-won sweat, was not mine to keep, but a forced tribute to my parents. They treated me as nothing more than free labor, exploiting my hopes and dreams while stripping away my right to independence. That revelation hit me like a freight train, shattering the illusion of familial love and leaving me questioning who I truly was. For as long as I can remember, my parents had always been a towering presence in my life, a blend of strict expectations, unwavering control, and an unspoken demand that I serve their needs without question. Growing up, I was raised on the promise that hard work and sacrifice would eventually earn me a measure of respect and independence. I took pride in every paycheck, every promotion at my first job, believing that each step forward was a step toward forging my own identity. But as I entered adulthood, a sinister pattern began to emerge, one that would redefine the very essence of my self-worth. I vividly recall the day I received my first full paycheck. I felt a rush of pride as I cradled that paper in my hands, imagining all the possibilities that lay ahead, a modest apartment of my own, the freedom to make my own choices, and perhaps even a small nest egg to someday start a family. Instead, that paycheck was promptly confiscated by my parents. They claimed it was for family expenses and the upkeep of the home, words that were repeated so often I began to believe them as truth. Over time, it became clear that every cent I earned was not seen as my hard work but as a resource to be managed by them, a silent testimony to my status as a perpetual child, unworthy of financial autonomy. My parents' exploitation was subtle at first, a withheld allowance here, a forced contribution there. But as the years passed, their control grew more insidious. I remember being scolded if I even thought about saving money for myself. "We know what's best for you," they would say, their tone both patronizing and absolute. I was expected to work tirelessly, not for my own future, but to serve their insatiable needs. Birthdays, holidays, and every significant milestone in my life were overshadowed by a relentless expectation to contribute every dollar I earned to their coffers. My bank account, which should have been a symbol of my independence, became a ledger of their dominance. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself that this was simply how families worked, that my parents had sacrificed so much for me, and in return, I owed them everything. I worked hard, saving every spare moment and every extra dollar, believing that one day I'd be free from these chains. I dreamed of the day I could finally claim what was rightfully mine, a life of my own design, unburdened by the demands of those who never saw me as an independent person. But as the years went on, those dreams began to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of entrapment and desperation. The turning point came one cold winter evening. I had just received my monthly salary, a hard-earned sum that I had fought tooth and nail to secure. I expected to use a part of it to pay for my modest expenses, perhaps even set aside a little for a future of my own choosing. Instead, as soon as I walked through the door, I was met by my parents' insistent demands. They sat me down at the dining table, their faces stern and unyielding, and with an air of finality, they informed me that every dollar I earned would now be directly deposited into the family account. There was no room for negotiation, no discussion of my own needs. Their words were cold, authoritative, and final, a merciless decree that my independence was a luxury I could no longer afford. I felt as if the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. In that moment, every hope I had nurtured for a future of my own was extinguished. The realization that I was nothing more than a financial servant to the family, that my worth was measured solely by my willingness to sacrifice my own dreams, hit me with a force I could hardly endure. I retreated to my room, where I sat on the edge of my bed, tears streaming silently down my face, as the full weight of my parents' control sank in. I wondered if I had ever truly been seen, if anyone had ever cared about what I wanted from life beyond their demands. Over the following days, a storm of anger, sadness, and deep-seated betrayal raged within me. I wandered through our old family home, a place that was meant to be a sanctuary, and each room whispered painful reminders of a childhood filled with both love and control. The memories were bittersweet. I recalled times when my parents celebrated my achievements, yet even then, their praise was laced with conditions and expectations. Their love, I realized, had always been transactional, a barter system in which my hard work was exchanged for their approval, a system that left me perpetually in debt. In the solitude of my small apartment, I sought refuge in my journal. I wrote feverishly about every instance of exploitation, the moment they took my first paycheck, the countless times they refused to let me manage my own money, and the growing realization that my identity was being systematically eroded. My writing was raw, unfiltered, and at times, desperate, a cry for freedom from a cycle that had robbed me of my autonomy and dignity. Each word was a testament to the years of silent suffering and the relentless pressure to conform to their demands. I poured out my anger and sorrow, the ink on the pages a bitter reminder of a future I had been forced to sacrifice. But as I filled page after page with my pain, something unexpected began to stir within me, a small, determined ember of defiance. Amid the overwhelming despair, I started to see that I had the power to reclaim my life. The realization was gradual, like the slow emergence of dawn after a long, dark night. I began to understand that my self-worth was not tied to the dollars that were stolen from me, but to my own courage, resilience, and the capacity to dream beyond the confines of their control. That revelation hit me one chilly afternoon as I sat by the window, watching the snow gently blanket the city, a scene of quiet beauty amid the chaos of my thoughts. In that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I would reclaim my independence, no matter how difficult the journey might be. I decided to start by setting small, personal goals, things like managing my own bank account, budgeting my expenses, and saving even a little bit for my future. Every tiny step, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was a quiet act of rebellion against the life that had been forced upon me. I reached out to a trusted friend, Sarah, who had always been a voice of reason and encouragement in my life. Over long conversations and supportive messages, I shared my struggles and my burgeoning resolve to take back control. "You deserve to live for yourself," she told me gently, "to build a life that reflects who you truly are, not who they want you to be." Her words resonated with me, reinforcing the spark of determination that was beginning to take root deep within my heart. Emboldened by Sarah's support, I started researching ways to protect my earnings. I sought advice from financial counselors who specialized in helping individuals break free from familial financial control. I learned about budgeting, investment options, and even small steps to open an independent bank account. Each piece of advice was a revelation, a roadmap that promised a future where I could manage my own money, make my own decisions, and finally have a say in the life I wanted to lead. It wasn't an easy journey, the path was strewn with obstacles and the constant fear of repercussions, but every new piece of knowledge was a small victory. At the same time, I began to explore the deeper, more personal implications of the betrayal. I delved into therapy, seeking to untangle the web of emotions that had ensnared me for so long. My therapist, Dr. Marquez, gently guided me through the maze of resentment, self-doubt, and the overwhelming sense of inadequacy that had been instilled in me by years of exploitation. "Your parents' actions do not define you," she would say softly. "They may have taken your earnings, but they cannot take away your potential or your right to forge your own path." Her words were a soothing balm to my wounded spirit, slowly replacing the bitter echoes of my past with a quiet, resolute belief in my own worth. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see subtle signs of change within myself. I found that I could smile again without the weight of despair crushing me. I began to reconnect with passions I had long forgotten: reading, writing, and even experimenting with digital art. Each small act of self-care was a step toward reclaiming the identity that had been suppressed for so long. I also started planning a small getaway, a short, solo trip to a quiet coastal town where I could reflect, heal, and rediscover the beauty of living independently. The prospect of travel, of exploring a new landscape without the constraints of my past, filled me with a cautious optimism that I had not felt in years. With each new sunrise, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that my journey was not over. Every hardship, every betrayal, had shaped me into someone stronger, someone capable of reclaiming my destiny. I began to understand that my self-worth was intrinsic, a flame that no amount of financial control or emotional manipulation could ever extinguish. I resolved that I would build a future defined by my own choices, where every dollar I earned, every success I achieved, was a testament to the resilience of my spirit. Standing now on the brink of a future reimagined, I carry with me the lessons of a painful past and the quiet, steadfast hope of a woman who has begun to find her voice. I know that the road ahead will be fraught with challenges and that the scars of exploitation will never completely fade. But I also know that each small victory, every independent decision, every reclaimed dollar, every moment of genuine self-love, is a step toward a life where I am truly free. And so, with the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, I step forward into this new chapter, determined to rewrite my story. I am no longer defined by the financial chains that once bound me, nor by the echoes of my parents' demands. I am the architect of my own destiny, a woman who will reclaim her earnings, her dreams, and her rightful place in the world. Every step I take is a defiant act of self-empowerment, a testament to the belief that, despite the betrayals of the past, my future is mine to create. In the weeks after I discovered that every hard-earned dollar I made was being siphoned off to support my parents' lavish lifestyle, I felt like I was drowning in a relentless tide of isolation and despair. Each day blurred into the next, and every morning I woke to the crushing realization that I was nothing more than free labor, a tool in their unyielding machine of self-interest. I spent countless hours in solitude, pacing the confines of my cramped apartment and staring at my bank statements with a growing sense of injustice. My life, once filled with dreams of independence and self-made success, had been hijacked by a betrayal so profound that it left me questioning my very identity. I remember one particularly bleak afternoon when I sat alone at my small kitchen table, the only sound the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant echoes of traffic outside. Before me lay a thick envelope of bank documents, receipts, and transaction records that painted a damning picture. Every dollar I earned, painstakingly earned through late nights and relentless dedication, had been funneled straight into my parents' accounts. The shock was paralyzing. I had built my career with a fierce passion, believing that every sacrifice was a step toward a future of freedom and autonomy. Yet now, the reality was that my efforts were exploited to sustain a life I had never chosen, a life that left me financially drained and emotionally shattered. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself that maybe they needed the money for some greater purpose, that it was all part of the family plan. But as I reviewed the documents over and over, it became impossible to ignore the truth. I was treated like a perpetual child whose labor was free, a resource to be harvested without regard for my own dreams. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it had been a slow poison, a subtle erosion of my financial independence that I had accepted with a mix of naivete and hope. Now, with every figure glaring at me from the page, I felt a deep, searing anger that churned inside me like a storm. The first few days were a blur of sleepless nights and tear-stained pages as I racked my brain for answers. I tried to remember every conversation, every dismissive remark that might have foreshadowed this. I recalled moments when I had hesitated to ask about my paycheck, when I had smiled politely even as I sensed something was amiss. But the evidence was undeniable. My parents had systematically taken control of every dollar I earned, leaving me to wonder if I had been nothing more than a pawn in their relentless pursuit of comfort and status. Unable to bear the mounting weight of this deception, I began retreating further into isolation. I cancelled plans with friends, withdrew from family gatherings, and locked myself away in my apartment, a self-imposed exile from a world that no longer felt safe. The nights were the worst. In the dark, quiet hours, when the only sound was the erratic beating of my own heart, I would stare at the ceiling and replay every moment of my life as if searching for a sign that I could still reclaim what was mine. The solitude was suffocating, yet it also forced me to confront a painful truth. I had allowed myself to be diminished, to be treated as if my labor was nothing more than an endless supply of free energy for others. In that crucible of loneliness, I turned to my old journals, worn, leather-bound books that once held the vibrant dreams of my youth. I began to write feverishly, not just about the betrayal, but about the small, persistent question that now haunted me: who am I, if not for the money I earn? My pen scratched across the paper as I recounted the countless sacrifices I had made, the late nights at work, the skipped celebrations, all for the sake of what I believed would be my independence. Each word was a mix of bitter resentment and a dawning awareness that I was more than a source of free labor. I began to see that the exploitation was not just about money, it was about a deep-seated belief in my own inferiority that had been instilled by years of being taken for granted. Slowly, as I wrote, I began to feel a stirring, a spark of defiance amid the overwhelming despair. I recalled a time, not too long ago, when I had dared to dream of a future where I controlled my destiny, where my hard work was celebrated rather than stolen. That memory, once buried beneath the layers of betrayal, resurfaced with a force that I could no longer ignore. I resolved, with trembling conviction, that I would reclaim my identity. I would no longer allow my parents' insatiable greed to define me. Every dollar they took was a reminder that my independence was being systematically eroded, but it was also a call to arms. Emboldened by this newfound resolve, I began taking small, deliberate steps toward regaining control of my life. I started by scrutinizing my finances, learning the intricacies of budgeting, and even setting up alerts on my bank account to monitor every transaction. I reached out to a trusted financial advisor, someone who had always encouraged me to stand on my own 2 feet. Over long, painstaking sessions, we mapped out a plan, a strategy to gradually reclaim what was rightfully mine. I learned about investment options, savings accounts, and even the possibility of legal recourse to reclaim a portion of the money that had been siphoned away. Every new piece of financial knowledge was a small victory, a defiant act against the years of exploitation. At the same time, I began to reconnect with the parts of myself that had been stifled under the weight of endless responsibility. I returned to old hobbies that once brought me joy, picking up the guitar I had long neglected, revisiting books that had once inspired me, and even dabbling in digital art, a creative outlet that allowed me to express the tumult of my emotions in colors and shapes. Each brushstroke and every chord I strummed felt like a reclamation of my soul, a small but significant step toward rebuilding my self-esteem. During this period of transformation, I also reached out to old friends who had, over the years, quietly admired my work ethic and integrity. In hushed conversations over coffee and late-night phone calls, I shared my story, my pain, and my growing determination to carve out a future that was independent of my parents' control. Their support was a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder that my worth was recognized by those who truly cared, not by those who saw me merely as a means to their own ends. "You deserve to live for yourself," one friend told me, his voice full of quiet strength. "Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Those words became a mantra, echoing in my mind as I took each step toward reclaiming my independence. As I delved deeper into this personal revolution, I began documenting my journey on a private blog, an online diary where I could share my struggles, my victories, and the incremental steps toward a life reclaimed. The act of writing not only served as a therapeutic release but also connected me with others who had faced similar betrayals. The anonymous messages of support, the shared stories of financial exploitation and emotional neglect, were a powerful reminder that I was not alone. In that digital space, I found a community of voices that echoed the same determination to break free from the chains of familial exploitation. One particularly cold evening, as I sat alone by the window watching the city's lights flicker in the distance, I reflected on the journey so far. I realized that every act of betrayal, every dollar that had been taken from me without my consent, was a stepping stone toward a greater awakening, a call to redefine my value not by what I earned, but by who I was. I recalled the countless nights I had spent working, not for the sake of my own dreams, but to feed a system that saw me as expendable. That realization ignited a fierce determination within me. I would no longer be a passive victim. I would take back control of my finances, my future, and my self-worth. With that in mind, I began setting concrete, achievable goals. I started small, open a personal savings account, set aside a fraction of every paycheck, and learn to invest wisely. Each goal was a tiny act of rebellion, a declaration that I was more than free labor, that I was an individual with dreams, ambitions, and the right to secure my own future. Every time I watched the balance in my new account grow, it felt like a victory against the system that had long exploited me. At work, I continued to push for recognition of my contributions. I volunteered for new projects, taking on tasks that showcased my skills and my innovative ideas. I networked with colleagues who shared my vision of a fair and independent professional life. Slowly, my efforts began to yield results, a commendation here, a promotion there, and with each success, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. I was beginning to see that my value was not tied to the dollars that were taken from me, but to the passion and dedication I brought to every task. In the midst of this personal and professional resurgence, I also took time to confront the emotional scars left by years of exploitation. I sought out therapy to help me navigate the tangled web of resentment and self-doubt. In sessions with Dr. Nguyen, I learned to reframe my narrative, to see my past not as a series of losses but as the foundation for a more resilient, self-empowered future. "Your worth isn't measured in dollars or in the sacrifices you're forced to make," she told me. "It's measured in the strength with which you rise after being knocked down." Those words, gentle yet profound, echoed in my mind as I continued on my journey. With each passing day, the despair that once threatened to consume me gave way to a quiet determination, a slow, steady belief that I was in control of my destiny. I began to plan a small, personal celebration, something that would mark the beginning of my newfound independence. I organized a modest dinner with a few close friends, a night to toast to the reclamation of my self-worth and the promise of a future where I was the master of my own fate. As I sat around the table, the warm glow of candlelight and the gentle murmur of supportive voices filled the room, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. In that moment, I understood that my journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, and the scars of the past might never fully fade. But I had discovered an inner strength that no one could take away, a quiet, unyielding resilience that promised that every setback was simply the foundation for a greater comeback. I vowed to continue learning, growing, and fighting for the life I deserved, a life where my hard work was recognized as mine, where my dreams were nurtured rather than exploited. Now, as I sit at my desk writing these words, I am filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The betrayal I experienced was painful, but it has also become the catalyst for my transformation, a turning point that has awakened a warrior within me, determined to reclaim every ounce of independence and self-worth that was once stolen. Every day, as I check my new bank account, as I complete another successful project at work, and as I share my journey with those who find solace in my words, I am reminded that my worth is mine to define. I look toward the future with cautious optimism, ready to face the challenges that lie ahead, and determined to build a life that is authentically my own, a life where every dollar earned is a testament to my resilience, every goal achieved a symbol of my independence, and every step taken a declaration that I am no longer free labor, but a force in my own right. The day I finally gathered the courage to confront my parents marked the dawn of a new era in my life, a moment of reckoning that would forever alter my destiny. I woke early that morning, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fierce determination, as I prepared to step out of the shadows of financial exploitation and claim what was rightfully mine. Every fiber of my being throbbed with the raw memories of years spent being treated as free labor, every dollar I earned stripped away like a piece of my identity. Today, I vowed, would be the day I reclaimed not only my money but my self-respect and independence. I drove to their stately home with trembling hands gripping the steering wheel, a folder of meticulously compiled financial records and legal documents secured in the glove compartment. 4 years, I had painstakingly tracked every deposit, every transaction, and every withdrawal, each one a cold, hard testament to the fact that my hard work was being funneled directly into their lavish lifestyle. As I parked outside their imposing mansion, the morning mist mingled with my swirling thoughts, and I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The front door swung open before I could knock, and there they were, my parents, sitting in the parlor as if nothing was amiss. Their expressions were unreadable, but I saw a flicker of uncertainty in my father's eyes when he noticed me. My mother's gaze, however, was cold and detached, as though my presence was an inconvenience rather than the culmination of years of suppressed anger and exploitation. I cleared my throat, my voice barely a whisper at first, and said, "I need to talk to you, about my money, about everything." The conversation that followed was a slow, tense unraveling of truths that had been buried beneath layers of manipulation. I laid out the evidence I had gathered, bank statements, transaction records, even the subtle discrepancies in our family's financial accounts that I had discovered over months of secret research. My voice grew steadier as I recounted every detail, every unjust deduction that had chipped away at my earnings. "I worked hard for every dollar," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check, "and for years, you've taken it all without my consent. I trusted you, and you betrayed me by treating me as nothing more than free labor." For a long, agonizing moment, silence reigned. I could feel the weight of their unspoken guilt pressing in the room. My father's eyes darted to mine, then away again, while my mother pursed her lips, her face an impenetrable mask. Finally, my father spoke in a voice that trembled with a mixture of regret and defiance. "We did what we thought was best for you," he said, though the words rang hollow in the face of the truth I held. "It was always about keeping you safe, about providing for the family. But I wasn't there to be placated or consoled. The betrayal wasn't about safety, it was about control, about denying me the independence that every adult deserves." "No," I replied, my voice firm now, "you deprived me of the right to my own life. Every dollar I earned was meant to build my future. I've had enough. I'm taking back what is mine." At that moment, I felt a strange catharsis as if the years of suppressed resentment were finally being unleashed. I handed them copies of every document I had compiled. I demanded that they return the funds I had been forced to forfeit, money that, over time, had accumulated into a sum that now represented not just lost earnings, but lost dreams. My words echoed in the vast, silent room, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of realization in their eyes, an acknowledgement that the system they had long abused was collapsing before them. My mother's voice, usually so composed, cracked as she said, "You think you can just take it all back?" But I was resolute. "Yes," I answered, "I can, and I will. I've already set up a legal strategy. I'm not asking for charity, I'm demanding what's rightfully mine." The tension in the room was palpable as my father stared at me, equal parts anger and sorrow etched in his features. It was then that I noticed something unexpected. Beneath his hardened exterior, I glimpsed a profound regret, a silent admission that perhaps he had lost sight of what truly mattered. Over the next few hours, a battle of words unfolded, a confrontation that pitted my long-held belief in fairness against the ingrained habits of entitlement that had governed our family for decades. I recounted every sacrifice I had made, every sleepless night and every missed opportunity to invest in my own future because I was forced to funnel my earnings into a collective pool. I explained how I had dreamed of saving enough to buy a modest home, to start a small business, to live my life with the independence that every person deserves. Instead, I was trapped in a cycle of exploitation, my potential siphoned away like water from a parched well. As I spoke, I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. My parents' once defiant expressions gave way to reluctant acceptance. My father's eyes, heavy with the weight of unspoken apologies, softened, and he murmured, maybe we were wrong. It was a tentative acknowledgement, but it was enough to set the stage for a long, difficult negotiation. I wasn't prepared for forgiveness, not yet, but I needed accountability, a commitment that my future earnings would be mine to manage. I laid out the terms, a full accounting of every dollar taken from me, a clear, transparent system for my future earnings, and an agreement that I would have complete control over my finances from that day forward. The discussion dragged on, marked by long silences and moments of bitter confrontation. I could feel the years of resentment and suppressed pain rising to the surface. At one point, my mother burst into tears, sobbing softly as she admitted that she had never meant to hurt me, that it was all done for the family's sake. Her words, though tinged with remorse, couldn't erase the fact that I had been robbed of my autonomy. You were not a child, I said, voice trembling with both fury and sorrow. I was an adult, with dreams and aspirations of my own, and you took that away from me. When the negotiation finally ended, I left their home with a heavy folder of documents and a cautious sense of victory. I knew that this was only the beginning of a long, legal battle, a battle to reclaim not just my money, but my self-worth and the future I had once envisioned. In the days that followed, I sought refuge in my work, channeling the raw, tumultuous emotions into innovative projects that reminded me of my own capabilities. I began to rebuild my financial independence, setting up a personal savings account and taking deliberate steps to educate myself about investments and budgeting. Every small victory, a successful transaction, a positive review from a colleague, a supportive message from a friend, was a brick in the foundation of the new life I was determined to construct. In the quiet solitude of my apartment, I continued writing in my journal, capturing every moment of triumph and every setback with painstaking detail. The pages filled with a narrative of resilience and transformation, a story that was becoming a testament to the fact that no one could define my worth but me. I wrote about the moment I walked away from my parents' home, the feeling of liberation mixed with lingering sadness, and the realization that I was finally taking control of my destiny. I reached out to a legal team dedicated to helping individuals reclaim their rights in cases of familial exploitation. Their expertise and unwavering support provided a roadmap for the journey ahead, a journey that would involve countless meetings, endless paperwork, and a confrontation with a system that had long taken advantage of my trust. Each legal victory, no matter how small, reinforced the belief that I was not merely a victim but an active participant in shaping my own future. The process was grueling, filled with setbacks and moments when I questioned whether I could truly reclaim what was lost. Yet, with each step forward, I felt a growing sense of empowerment, a quiet, determined rebellion against the forces that had once controlled my life. Outside of the legal and financial battles, I began to reconnect with the parts of myself that had been buried under years of sacrifice. I embraced hobbies that I had long neglected, reading, painting, and even writing poetry that captured the pain and the beauty of my journey. I started attending support groups and networking events where I met others who had experienced similar betrayals. Their stories, though varied, echoed the same sentiment, that true strength comes not from what is taken from you, but from what you do to reclaim your life. In these moments, I learned that the scars of the past were not marks of defeat but badges of survival, a testament to my resilience and my unwavering commitment to live authentically. One cold winter evening, as I sat by my window watching the city lights shimmer against the dark sky, I reflected on how far I had come since that fateful day. The pain of betrayal still lingered like a distant echo, but it was no longer a chain that bound me. Instead, it had become the fuel for my transformation, a force that propelled me to forge a new identity defined by my own choices and dreams. I realized that I had the power to reshape my future, to build a life that was rich in independence, success, and genuine self-worth. Every conversation, every legal document signed, every small victory at work was a reminder that I was reclaiming not only my money but the very essence of who I was meant to be. Now, as I stand at the threshold of a future reimagined, I feel an unyielding sense of clarity and hope. My journey has been long and painful, a road paved with heartbreak, legal battles, and countless moments of self-doubt. Yet, each of these experiences has taught me that my worth is intrinsic, that my potential is boundless, and that no amount of betrayal can extinguish the fire that burns within me. I have learned to embrace my scars as symbols of resilience, to honor my journey as the foundation of a life built on strength and self-determination. Today, I step forward with a renewed commitment to myself, a promise that I will never allow the actions of others to define my destiny. I will rebuild my finances, my career, and my identity with every ounce of passion and determination I possess. I will create a future where every dollar I earn is a testament to my hard work, every goal achieved a reflection of my true potential, and every day a reminder that I am the architect of my own destiny. As I take my first steps into this uncharted territory, I carry with me the lessons of the past, a deep understanding that betrayal, while painful, can also be the catalyst for profound personal transformation. I am no longer the person who was silenced by exploitation, nor the one who allowed my dreams to be deferred by the selfish actions of others. I am a survivor, a fighter, and a visionary determined to forge a future that is entirely my own. Every sunrise now brings with it a promise that my journey, with all its twists and turns, is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. In this new chapter of my life, I embrace the uncertainty and the challenges ahead with a quiet confidence. I know there will be moments of lingering pain, days when the memories of exploitation threaten to resurface. But I also know that with every challenge I overcome, I am building a legacy of independence and self-respect that no one can ever take away. I will continue to fight for my rights, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to ensure that my future is defined not by the actions of my parents, but by the unwavering belief in my own worth. And so, with the final documents signed and the echo of my parents' betrayal now a part of my past, I step forward into a future where I am free, a future where every victory is mine, every dream is attainable, and every day is a chance to redefine my destiny. I have taken back control of my life, and I will continue to build a future where my self-worth is celebrated, where my labor is honored, and where I am truly the master of my own fate.